What's up, heathens? How ya doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be going through a video that a pastor put together for his church. In this video, this pastor is going to attempt to explain atheism to us. Mainly 3 different types of atheism. Now, something tells me that this guy doesn't know a thing about atheism. And sure enough, he is going to misrepresent us all. So, if you want to find out exactly how bad this pastor misrepresents atheists and atheism, then please stay tuned. So tonight is this guy right here. He's a pastor. I'm not exactly sure where. We have this pastor here who wanted to talk about atheism with his congregation. So he put together this little video, completely vertical, and he's going to go through these 3 different types of atheism, and he's going to explain why they're shit.
Who picks out his geranimals?
His what? All right, Pastor Pete, why don't you tell us what these 3 types of atheism are?
Today's psalm is Psalm 53. I will read all of it for us. The fool says in his or her heart, "There is no God. They are corrupt, doing abominable iniquity. There is none that does good." God looks down from heaven on the children of humanity to see if there are any who understand, who seek after God. They have all fallen away. Together they have become corrupt. There is none who does good, not even one.
I find the irony of him saying this to be very palpable, because he's saying that no atheist out there, nobody that disbelieves in God, can do anything good. But he's saying it using an electronic device to record himself and then post it on YouTube through the internet. Now, that's the ironical part, because Alan Turing, who was a gay atheist during the World War II era, who developed the first computer, and without Alan Turing and his Turing machine, we, one, wouldn't have done as well as we did in the war as far as fighting the Nazis, meaning that we defeated them. 2, we wouldn't have modern technology. Like, sure, it could have come out of some other way, but to say that atheists just don't do anything good is just ridiculous.
Well, I mean, that's aside. I mean, set all of that shit aside, because that's an if thing here or there. But, like, atheists do charity work all the time. Atheists do good. I mean, you can see proof of it all over the internet. It's really not that hard to figure out. You don't even have to go to a if this then that scenario at all just to see atheists doing good things.
Very good point there, Casey. I don't understand why they repeat this particular psalm or these particular ideas when it's so verifiably wrong.
Have those who work evil no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread, who do not call upon God? There they are in great terror, where there is no terror. For God scatters the bones of him or her who encamps against him. You put them to shame, for God has rejected them. Oh, that salvation for Israel would come out of Zion. When God restores the fortunes of his people, let Israel rejoice, let Jacob be glad.
The word of the Lord is fucking bullshit and is verifiably false, so maybe we should find something else. I don't know. Fuck.
As we read this, you may have been thinking, I've heard this before. Or if your memory is good, you might remember that this was Psalm 14, and it almost exactly parallels Psalm 14. But what is most valuable bears repeating. So let's take a look at the psalm here. First line, the fool says in his or her heart, there is no God. And we, most of us anyway, tend to jump immediately to concepts of modern atheism or the current atheism in style, which takes for us multiple forms. At risk of oversimplification, I will break this down into 3 primary types of atheism alive and well in our culture today.
All right, before you get to the three types of atheism, for one thing, I really hate that you can't speak more than 4 miles an hour. I mean, I feel like you could still possibly run over a person in the middle of the street with that, but I wish that you could speak a little faster. But I also hate Psalm 14:1, where it says that fools say in their hearts that there is no God. For one thing, I don't really give a fuck what your particular holy book says. Your holy book is designed to tell people that the only way that's the correct and right way is our way. And anybody that thinks differently than us is bad, they don't do any good, they're horrible things, and you don't need to be that way
or else we're gonna fucking kill you.
And so the fact that you have a holy book that you're following that tells you that has these thought-stopping techniques in it that prevent you from thinking for yourself and then allowing other people to tell you what to think, I would hope that you would want to just throw that away and find something else. Don't ever adhere to something that forces you not to think about the positions that it's pushing.
The first, and this stems from the time of the writers of the Constitution on, is that there is a God, but this God does not act in history. This is called deism, or deism. It's as if the universe is a great big clock which God wound up and tossed out into emptiness, and now it runs along perfectly well on its own, and we can form and instruct within it with our laws and constitutions and so on. But God does not act in my individual life.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Deism is not atheism. You're literally defining atheism as just another form of theism, because that's what deism is, and that's not atheism. That's still believing in a higher power. So I mean, that's literally not atheism. And I was really surprised when I heard him describe these three types of atheists, and this was his first one. If there is a God that does exist, I think the most likely version of God that exists is the deistic God. It's the simplest version of God out there. Some supernatural being that just started the universe and then left it be, and he doesn't have any kind of interference in this world, doesn't do any miracles in this world or anything like that. He just sort of started it and let it go. And I think that is the simplest version of God that you could really describe. But I also think that it's probably the most likely version of God if one were to exist. So I really don't have problems with any deists that might be out there. I feel like at that point, it's just a difference of opinion. They believe in a supernatural being that started everything, and I just simply don't. I don't see that evidence. So, and I have that particular position with plenty of Christians and people of other faiths too, where it just boils down to, well, this is my opinion, that's your opinion. Hey, we all got opinions. It's just like our assholes.
The second, and this is in a way my favorite, people make up a God they don't like and then tend to not believe in this God. I don't believe in God because, and they'll list the reasons, which are their reasons. A subset of this is people who are disappointed in God. Well, I prayed to God and God didn't do what I wanted. This is a rather immature way of looking at things. But because I am disappointed in God, there is no God, God didn't do what I want. But this makes of God a puppet. Who wants a God like that?
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's taught in churches that you pray to God and He will work in your life. Even in Scripture, you have Bible verses like, I think it was one of the feeding of the 5,000, where Jesus talks about how knock and the door shall be opened and all that. The imagery given is basically you ask God for something and He will give you something. And then, of course, at the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus just says, hey, put your baskets in the air like you just don't care, and then bring them down, and you got a whole bunch of fucking fish and bread. It didn't rhyme, but you know, it was the first century and he was Jewish. Not that that means that Jewish people can't I'm saying a lot of things tonight. In the religion, it's taught that you can ask God for things. And even in the Old Testament, God firmly states that if you adhere to him and do what he says, then he will do good things in your life. He will provide you with good things in your life. To act like, oh, well, I followed God and I did everything that was part of my denomination and God still fucked me over and I'm not happy with that. I think that that is a valid reason to investigate why you believe in something and if you truly believe in it. I don't know of anybody out there that has something bad happen to them and then immediately just doesn't believe in God. Normally, there's a sort of journey along, what they believe in. That's usually how it happens, but I'm not going to say that nobody out there has had some kind of traumatic event and then they automatically just are like, fuck God, I don't believe in God kind of thing. I do, but I mean, it's the way that the Bible is set up. It's a perfectly reasonable reaction for something bad to happen in your life and you're not satisfied with the explanations that a religion gives you or that your denomination gives you. Now, I don't think that that's making up a God or making up a puppet God and then saying, well, I don't believe in that God. Just because, if somebody does that, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are an atheist. That doesn't automatically make them an atheist. He would have the exact same reaction to plenty of other gods. I don't believe in Zeus. It's like, well, you're just making up your own God now and believing in that God. It seems like a little bit of a slippery slope here to just characterize atheists as having a traumatic experience and immediately losing their faith. And that means that they become an atheist. There are plenty of people that have a traumatic experience and find Christianity's explanations for why things have happened in their life, and they become Buddhist, they become Islamic, they become plenty of other different religions. They don't necessarily become atheist. But see, this is one aspect of Christianity that Christians don't normally like to talk about, and that's that in Christianity, you have everybody else as an outgroup, right? Just like with Islam, everybody's an infidel that's not a Muslim. It's the same thing with Christianity. Everybody that's not part of their faith is bad, horrible, and they're heathens. That's why I call you guys heathens here. They don't normally like to talk about how in-groupy, out-groupy the Bible actually is. But you can tell right here as he's going through it, he's saying that, if you're going to make up your own definition of what this particular God is, and then you're going to say, I don't believe in that one. And that automatically makes you part of this outgroup, which he's labeling as atheists.
This is something that must be outgrown, and often is, as people mature. A subset of this is, and this is subtle and this is dangerous, I will do whatever if you, God, will do what, of course, I want you to do. This is just another form of creating a puppet God who bends and turns and twists to our wishes. And this is not God, which is why I include it under forms of atheism.
I get that that's not your particular definition of God, but it's very painfully obvious that there are Christians out there that are like, you pray to God and he will answer your prayer. If somebody that's part of Christianity has a misunderstanding about how to be a good Christian or what the theology says, isn't that kind of a deficiency on a pastor's part? I can't remember right off the top of my head what church you're with, but my guess is that you labeling this quote-unquote puppet God as not being really God, and that's why you're filing these people under atheism. I would hazard to bet that you would call all other different denominations of Christianity not the real God. That's a puppet God, therefore you're atheist. Do you feel that way about Catholics? Because a lot of people out there love to say that Catholics aren't Christian and they worship some other kind of different fucking God when they really don't. Catholics are the OG Christians, okay? So you can't just shove them out of the club just because they have a different version of your Yahweh God than you want to have. I don't find this a very compelling argument for why people become an atheist or become some other religion because of some traumatic event or because God didn't answer their prayers or something like that. I don't know why you got to label just all of those people as atheists.
The one most current in its vogue coming from Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, and others, Sam Harris, deceased, is that the universe is just here. How it got here is a separate argument to be pursued on other days. But the universe is just here, and everything happens by blind, random chance. We just happen to be sitting here or listening to this or whatever we're doing. It's all blind, random chance.
So this third one here is basically he's resolving atheism down to what he interprets to be the result of thinking that God didn't start the universe and that everything just came about by chance. This is not anywhere near close to atheism. Atheism is just simply a lack of belief in a God. Or for those that are harder atheists, they would suggest that God 100% doesn't exist. Most atheists out there are probably going to land in the more agnostic atheist sort of realm. I feel like the harder atheists, the Gnostic atheists, are in just as an untenable position as any Christian is when they assert 100% that God does exist, right? What he's doing here is he's forming his own straw man version of what he thinks the Big Bang means for reality, for science. He's reducing it to be an atheist position. And it just simply isn't. That's something that creationists, or I guess it could be theistic evolutionists too, but just people that think that God started this universe and have a problem with happenstance or chance as far as how the universe came together, they've made up this particular thing and they're painting it as being bad. Well, it's not really bad. It's just sort of a statement of fact. But you also don't have to necessarily adhere to that being an atheist. So I don't necessarily think it was like all up to chance or whatever. I think that there's a bit of nuance surrounding that. But you could essentially say that it was, by chance that all of this arose. Like I said, though, I feel like there's a little bit of nuance to it because there's like non-random selection and non-happenstance things that are just a result of cause and effect. Those are the nuances that I'm talking about here. So he's completely confusing his own idea of what the Big Bang Theory is with atheism at this point.
They call this science, better scientism. It's not true science. They have no facts on which to base this theory.
Well, actually, there's a lot of facts to base it on, most notably a fucking picture of the microwave background radiation, which is the result of the Big Bang that happened. We know that it did happen, and we don't have any solid evidence that says that the Big Bang, in order for it to happen, the inflation of the universe, in order for that to happen, God needed to be there to do it. So we don't have any evidence for God having supernatural interventions into reality to cause things to happen. We don't have any evidence that a God is needed for the universe to inflate. It could have self-inflated, and we've gone pretty far to show how that's reasonably possible and plausible.
What's hidden in this argument against God is that if everything is by blind, random chance, then the statement they are making is also by blind, random chance. And if there is no meaning in the universe, then what they are saying is meaningless. So why pay attention to them at all? They defeat their argument in their argument. Hope that's not too philosophical for you.
Wow. No, that's not too philosophical for me because what you're saying here is just wrong. I don't understand why you think that me saying what I believe about the beginning of the universe is just random chance that I would say it. This is that nuance that I was talking about because it's a cause and effect thing. You say something dumb as fuck. I respond by enlightening you on some things. That's not by chance. That me being here isn't necessarily by chance. Ultimately, life and altogether, like life existing, yeah, that's by chance, but it's by chance like by cause and effect, and you have all of these things that go into it that lead up to life being here. And then just like with our interaction here, there's a cause and effect.
This seems to be the most absurd position of all.
It's only absurd because you just made it up. So, I mean, yeah, I would say that it's absurd because you made up a straw man version of everything. Like, you created a circular argument and then you're complaining about the circular argument that you just created. So it just seems like you're shooting yourself in the foot at this point.
None of these directly is what our psalmist is talking about, although all of them in a sense are trying to do the same thing. For the psalmist, the fool who does not believe in God, is the one who does not believe that God holds us accountable for our actions. This is very popular these days. In fact, it might be the most popular of all. Much of modern America and Europe and now Asia falls under this rubric that my life is my own to live, and God is not going to have any impact on that at all. Or at best, it is a secondary change that God might make.
Well, this is a very confusing set of statements here because I don't believe in your God or any other God. So I don't feel like it's necessary for me to adhere to his particular rule. And if that makes me a fool, that I don't adhere to your murderous blood god rules, then I'm fine being a fool. I would probably bet that you would peg other Christians as being fools as well in the way that you're defining what a fool is, or what these people that don't believe in God, because unless they believe in your specific version of God, even if that version extends to other denominations, my guess is that you would label some of these other denominations that do exist out there that don't strictly follow to your idea of what God is, you would label them as these people that don't believe in God. The people that don't believe in God are the people that don't believe in your God. So that means everybody else, including theists, that don't believe in your particular version of God, you are calling atheists right now.
We hang on tightly to there's only one life to live, and so we might as well live it with, as the old Slits ad said, with gusto.
No, that's not what atheism is about. We're still held accountable to ourselves, to our community, to whatever society that we live in. To break atheism down into hedonism is just not founded. Like, the two are completely different ideas. You can be atheist and hedonistic at the same time, but just because you're hedonistic doesn't mean that you're an atheist. I also wonder, how do you characterize these people that are in your own faith that sin without regard to God, that just ask for forgiveness because that's what their religion teaches them? That's what their denomination teaches them, is that you ask God for forgiveness and you are forgiven. And so any of the bad shit that you did is washed away. So I don't understand the benefit of religion in this aspect, other than you have a very easy way of overcoming this sense of accountability. Whereas atheists, or people that don't adhere to that particular version of God, most likely do have some kind of accountability because they don't have a way to just wash away the bad shit that they've done. If I go outside and just randomly punch somebody in the face and, do other bad shit towards them, I cannot then just get on my knees, pray to God, and everything's fine. Like, as an atheist, I can't do that. I am still accountable for those actions. But the way that Christians portray their faith, the way that Christians portray salvation and redemption and forgiveness, is that you do bad shit and then you pray to God and he forgives you as long as you feel sincere in your heart. And then it doesn't matter if you do it again, because you can just repeat the process. It's rinse and repeat. We see this all the time in Christian communities.
When we say to ourselves, God doesn't care if I do whatever, then we are already on the slope to putting our own personal desires ahead of God's will and wish and command. And we do it all the time. We're all guilty of this. I am, you are, all of us are. It's part of our makeup. It's our desire to assert ourselves. It begins at birth, and we carry it through our lives.
So I guess that would mean that God designed us to do this, right? Because if God creates all of us, then he created us to be that way, right? Or would you go with the whole original sin route? We did this to ourselves. So as soon as we're birthed from our mother's womb, that means that we're already just wanting to live this hedonistic lifestyle. I can guarantee you that when my son was born, he didn't know what the fuck was going on. He couldn't see more than maybe a foot past his face, and I think that's probably pushing it. Like, I don't think that baby's eyesight can really resolve things that far. But the point is that I really don't see the evidence to support your idea that straight out of the womb, we are automatically wanting to just do bad shit all the time. What you would classify as bad shit.
If you doubt me, there's an easy way to check this. Go to Exodus 20, read the 10 Commandments, pick one, and see how you measure up against it.
Thou shalt not murder. Well, I've managed not to do that unless you count all the bodies I've dropped on Call of Duty. Or the Division, or the Division 2, or all the multiple killing games out there. If you count them motherfuckers, then I guess I don't wager up to that particular commandment all that well. Let's see, what's another one? Honor thy mother and father. Well, fuck, I haven't done that all my life. I mean, I honor them now, I guess. Like, I'm not shitty towards them. Would that be honoring them? Thou shalt not steal. I don't steal, so I guess I measure up fine against that. If you're talking about the double-handed stroking of God's dick that is the first 4 fucking commandments, yeah, I don't measure up to those too well, but I don't feel like those are really moral things that you have to measure up to. I feel like that's the one that he's going to go to right here. It's like, oh, do you double fist hand stroke God every day? You're going to hell, motherfucker.
We could pick Sabbath keeping.
Sabbath keeping. See? A double fist stroking of God's 15-foot cock. That's what he goes to. Like, do you keep the Sabbath? If you don't keep the Sabbath, then you're going to hell. Because that's the 10 Commandments. How about this? I measure up pretty well to the second set of commandments. Well, the whole not boiling a goat in its mother's milk, I don't do that. The other ones are pretty much just a double-fisted stroking of God's cock. By the way, that particular phrase is monetizable on YouTube. That's why I'm saying it so much.
Not as I want Sabbath to be, but as God intended Sabbath to be. Not just a day of rest, but a holy day, a day set aside for God alone. See how we measure up to that on any given Sunday.
Well, I gotta tell you, normally I start out my Sundays by doing some fucking, and then I commit some blasphemy, and then we build ourselves a pentagram, and we sacrifice a small kitten. We do that in our non-existent basement, of course. Then we praise the devil. That's what atheists do, huh?
Pick any of them, and particularly measure yourself against them as Jesus would, whom you might remember said that you have heard, thou shalt not murder or kill, but I say to you, if you're even angry with your brother or sister, you've committed murder.
You see, that's just fucking shitty right there. If you're angry at somebody, you have not murdered them, okay? Likening being angry with a motherfucker to murdering them is just an abusive, toxic thing to do. And you doing this right here, kind of, for me at least, makes you a fucking shitty person, okay? Just because I'm angry with somebody does not mean that I have murdered them, motherfucker.
Wow. Measure yourself against that. And see if you don't immediately begin to start justifying. If you don't immediately start self-rationalization. Well, The
actual portions of the 10 Commandments, so the version 1.0 of the Ten Commandments, not the version 2.0 of the Ten Commandments. Version 1.0 of the Ten Commandments, the first 4 I don't give a fuck about. There's no self-rationalization about it, right? I don't have to rationalize my way around it because I don't consider those things to be immoral if I don't do them. Those first 4 I don't give a fuck about. The honoring thy mother and father, I don't think that you have to honor your father or your mother. I think that that's pretty fucking stupid to suggest that you have to do that. It perpetuates this idea that you have to hold them at this higher level and that you can't criticize them or you can't separate yourself from them. Or, if you have an abusive father, you just have to take the abuse, or an abusive mother, you just have to take the abuse. That perpetuates abuse. And then, of course, the ones that are actually bad or wrong, I'm fine with. Those are things that were decided upon way before Christianity was a thing, way before Judaism was a thing. And also, the whole don't covet your neighbor's wife is more about coveting property than it is about committing adultery or anything.
The Reformers saw this, and used a very unfortunate term, I think, but they saw this as total depravity, that we will always turn inward to our own selfish desires ahead of God. It's in all of us. At risk of making it sound too easy, I'm going to say that the remedy for this is at the cross. And the remedy is that God, being God, completely gave up everything that God was. A total unselfish act.
I really don't consider the crucifixion to be an unselfish act. It was literally a BDSM weekend for fucking God. He could have just blinked the shit out of existence. He could have done any number of things that could have erased the original sin or given people salvation. But what did he choose to do? He chose to, I guess, create a Horcrux, to use Harry Potter language, because it's just as ridiculous as Harry Potter as far as thinking that it's reality. He created a Horcrux and called it Jesus. And then he forced his Horcrux copy of himself, or portion of himself, to get whipped and put up on a cross for shits and giggles. I mean, he could have done anything in order to absolve this shit, but what did he choose to do? Get fucking beat with whips. That kind of sounds like BDSM to me.
In place of all our selfishness. A total self-giving, a total self-emptying on behalf of those of us who always choose self first. And by giving grace to us, we begin to turn to this God in love. When we see, and I don't know that I have words for it, or that any of us have words for it, or that there are words for it, but when we see the depths of this love, the only possible response is love.
If you guys don't know, we have a daily Bible podcast here where we're going through the Bible cover to cover, and I do not see God's love at all. We're in Isaiah right now. There is no love from God in Isaiah. Let me just give you a little bit of a taste. This past week, you know what God did? He firebombed all of these Israelites' houses, and then he comes back to them and is like, hey, I see I firebombed your house there. It's all burnt to shit. I stomped on it so you can't rebuild the shit. Hey, I got a place. You want to come and stay with me even though I just fucking firebombed your ass? That is not love. That is an abusive relationship right there. That's all throughout the Old Testament. It's like a textbook for an abusive relationship. Oh, it hurts God to fuck you up like this. So you best be, happy that God is just gonna forgive you for it. I mean, every single turn, it seems like God is just an abusive fucking boyfriend that has beat you into submission, into thinking that you need him and that you have to exalt him at every single fucking turn.
And when one loves God, one becomes pliable to God's will. One becomes new, one becomes transformed. One begins to place God first in one's life. Or to use Bart's phrase, to love God is to give oneself to God. To love God is to give oneself to God. Let us pray.
No, we're not going to pray. Fuck that shit. Anyways, that's it for this guy tonight. I don't think that you got to give yourself to God in order to love God. I don't think that you should compromise yourself like that. Also, if your God is requiring you to give yourself to him, that sounds more like a cult and more like abusive sort of thought control than anything else. If you're going to be leaving out right now, I really appreciate you guys being here, watching tonight. If you will, share this out. Smash the like I already said. I think I already said it. Anyway, the Kraken's getting to me. And I guess I'll see you heathens later. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.